You are listening to the Be the Bridge podcast with Latasha Morrison.
How you guys doing today? It's exciting.
Each week, Be the Bridge podcast tackles subjects related to race and culture with the goal of bringing understanding.
But I'm going to do it in the spirit of love.
We believe understanding can move us toward racial healing, racial equity, and racial unity. Latasha Morrison is the founder of Be the Bridge, which is an organization responding to racial brokenness and systemic injustice in our world. This podcast is an extension of our vision to make sure people are no longer conditioned by a racialized society, but grounded in truth. If you have not hit the subscribe button, please do so now. Without further ado, let's begin today's podcast. Oh, and stick around for some important information at the end.
Okay, listen now. Be the Bridge community, I am so excited to have, I feel like I can call her my friend. It's like, I don't know, people that you know online, or if you've had a few conversations with, or if you exchanged a few texts with, you feel like you know them, but I feel like it's also kindred spirits and just other female leaders. And I have Miss Lisa Fields, who is here, who is leading an organization called Jude 3 Project. I've had my eyes on her for a while. I think we probably started, Lisa, did we start around the same time leading out? What year did you form? Yeah, what
we
year?
Started in 2014.
Okay, yep. And so that's about the same time that I was starting Be the Bridge. And we got our 501c3 in like 2015, 2016. And so around the same time of growth. And so we could share some stories, right?
Yeah.
And I think our friend BJ Thompson and Jamar Tisby kind of introduced us. We were in a conversation. I forget what we were in the conversation for. I think it was like raising money for nonprofits. Yeah.
And before that, we had met because we did the singles podcast on Truth Table.
Yes, we did that together. Oh, we could have a whole podcast around that, right? But let me tell you this. She is one of the world's most sought out after Christian apologists. She combines her passion for biblical literacy with her heart for sharing God's love. And during her college at the University of North Florida, and I think this is important. I know sometimes we read bios, but I think your leading point into forming Jude 13 is really important to your story and what you're doing now. And you took a New Testament course that shifted your life. You were a pastor's kid. You were familiar with the church and Christian faith and the importance of reading the Bible. She was also planning a career as a stockbroker in New York City. Sounds like me and my beginnings of trying to be a dentist. On the first day of her New Testament class, the professor declared, "I am going to change everything you thought you knew about Jesus." Throughout the course, her professor focused on biblical contradictions and textual criticism. And every sense of the matter, your faith was challenged, and it forced you to kind of rethink what you believed and decide about keeping your faith or abandoning your faith. And after college, you continued to wrestle with biblical concepts. Her faith while working in the financial services industry. Each day she wrestled with God's call for her life to further her education, to better defend the faith. She pursued her Master's of Divinity from Liberty University, something we have in common. And you see, you still have it on your bio. I'm not going to tell you what I did with mine, but no, that's good because God has a sense of humor, and the redemption really of that is, her time in seminary prepared her into her calling as an apologist. And during your last year of seminary, your passion to teach others how to defend their faith was clear. It was then that the Jude 3 Project was birthed. And the founder and president, Lisa's primary mission for the Jude 3 Project is to help the Black Christian community know what they believe and why they believe it. And I want to start with that. I understand your why, but I want you to explain it a little bit more too, especially our white brothers and sisters that are listening to this podcast now, why is the primary focus to help the Black Christian community know what they believe and why they believe it? Because I don't think they may even understand what is broken in that and why that's such a need. And for an African American person hearing that, I'm like, this is so needed. Mm-hmm. This is so needed in such a time as this. And so can you explain that to the community for me?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I'm excited to be here. So when I was first introduced to apologetics, it was me trying to navigate that class I was in, that New Testament class. My father introduced it to me, and I fell in love with it. But everybody that I saw outside of Ravi was a white old man, leading it. And I felt like while they were helpful in navigating that course, there were still some significant gaps for the questions in the Black community. And even some of the questions are similar, but the approach to answering them are different. And so I was like, in addition to that, we need to see ourselves leading in this space. To know that it's possible for us. And so those were the reasons that I thought it was important to focus on the African American community, to answer the questions that our community is asking, to approach it the way our community would be able to receive it, and also for people to see themselves as apologists. Like, you didn't see many women in the space, and you didn't see Black women at all. And so now that people see me as a Black woman leading it, they think, oh man, this is something I can aspire to. This is something I could be. This is a field that's for me as well.
Yeah. So you didn't let it take you out, but you saw a problem, and God has led you to create a solution and to speak into that and to change lives because of your faithfulness and because of your yes. And I'm just grateful to be breathing at the same time that you're breathing, because I don't even feel like, how you always say, you're just scratching the surface, there's so much I feel that God is going to do. And a lot of this started from a podcast. You a part of Jude 3, you do like this series of podcasts and videos and going through Christian history. Can you explain that to us, like some of the podcasts that you've done and some of the topics? I know like you do a lot with hermeneutics and all of that. So kind of explain that.
Yeah, so when we started the whole Jude 3 project, it started off as an events to train pastors. And so we did that a couple times, but it was localized. And I was like, if I wanted to reach the nations, I need to do a podcast. And so, but I wanted our podcast to be unique. I wanted our podcast to be inclusive because I felt like if I was called to the whole Black church, the Black church isn't a monolith.
Right.
There's AME, there's PAW, there's Church of God in Christ, there's National Baptist Convention of USA, National Baptist Convention
the Missionary Baptist now.
Missionary, Full Gospel, Primitive, CME.
Yes.
And I didn't want us to be in a bubble where we just got the Black people that are popular in one space. And so I started researching who had influence in all of those spaces. And I wanted to interview the people with influence in all the different denominations, not just Black, but white as well. And so we covered topics in a very broad way. And so that sometimes gets us in trouble because people are like, oh,
I can imagine the heat that you get.
Yeah. But I'm not called to a tribe. And so because I'm not called to one tribe, I understand that I have to transcend the tribalism.
Yes.
And
so good. Because that, you just gave me language for what I feel like would be the bridge. Because people will try to put you in a box. And, and I think transcending the tribalism. I love it. Girl, that's a t-shirt right there. I love it. That's good.
And so we've covered early African Christianity, like you said, hermeneutics. And I believe in a humble hermeneutic. And understanding that we all see through the glass dimly.
Yeah.
And everybody has a piece to add. And that's, you know, that's why bringing different voices to an apologetic table is helpful, because when you see apologetics dominated by all white men, they miss things because of just their cultural privilege and how they see the world and who they interact with. But then when you bring a black woman to apologetics, she's seeing things differently.
Yes.
And so you have to take your hermeneutic and say, you know what, be humble enough to say, I missed this in the text because the way I've been conditioned and the way I do life in my culture, certain things don't stand out to me. And so that, and then we do courageous conversations, which is one of our biggest things we have, where I bring the leading black scholars, thought leaders, and pastors from all different backgrounds on the conservative and progressive side to talk about a plethora of topics, which has got me in trouble as well.
Can imagine. Good trouble.
Yeah.
That's good. And I like the way, for those who are listening, because I know, you know, everybody's not a biblical scholar. I'm not a biblical scholar, you know, but even in using words like, you know, I'm in seminary now also, but like, just even with the word hermeneutics, like everybody doesn't know that and what it means. Can you explain, you know, what it means to contend to faith, you know?
Yeah. So hermeneutics is the art of interpreting God's word. And it is an art to it because it's not, we don't see it in the original language.
Right.
Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic. So we have some work to do sometimes to get to the meaning of the text. As it relates to apologetics and contending for the faith, apologetics comes from the Greek word apologia. And I always have to say that because for as long as my grandmother thought I said I'm sorry for Jesus for a living. And so I don't want to assume that people know what I mean. But it comes from 1 Peter 3:15 when Peter says we ought to be able to give a defense. And that word defense in the Greek means apologia. Give a defense for the hope that we have. But I also always include with gentleness and respect. So if you're giving a defense for the faith and you're not doing it with gentleness and respect, you're not doing biblical apologetics, you're doing something else.
Yeah. And I like here you say we practice hermeneutics to know and worship God by bringing our lives into harmony with his character and his will. And then you say once the word of God has hold of us, we are in a better position to interact with the world around us. And I mean taking this class in seminary just really gives you a broader sense of the word of God, understanding all the different parts and how to look at the Greek and how to look at the Hebrew and all those languages. So I know it's been a helpful, you know, I don't want to call it a tool, but a process for me, you know, because it is something you bring into your lifestyle, because we take the lens that we look through the world is the same lens that we see the Bible. And so the same, you know, glass ceilings that we have is the same ones we're bringing to our framework of the Bible. So that is great. You did some things like, I think one of the conversations I want to hear about, you just released a documentary called Unspoken. I want you to tell me about how that came to be, because this story is incredible, and share a little bit about some of the components that are in this movie and why they're included in the movie.
Yeah, so around 2017, a fan of Jude 3, his name is Chris Lamarck, reached out to me randomly, a cold email, and said, hey, I'm a fan of Jude 3. I'm also a filmmaker, and I want to do a film on early African Christianity to dispel the myth that Christianity is white men's religion based on the scholars, and I want it to be a collaboration with you. I said, great. That's a great idea. I don't have any money for that. As you know.
Woo, I know. There's so much we want to do and say, but money is a hindrance.
Yeah. The Bible said money answer of all things. So
yes. Gives you opportunity Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
And so he was like, well, I'll do it for free. I was like, that's great. I still don't have money for it because it's not just you filming it. It's flying people out. It's so many. When you're an organizational leader, you know it's more than just one dynamic to cost.
Yeah.
And so he
was willing to do whatever it took. Like, I love that.
Yeah. And so I kind of put him on the back burner. Fast forward a year later, I get a random Facebook message from Adam Coleman, who's an apologist. And he says, hey, there's an NFL player who wants to do a documentary. Him and his wife have set some money aside. But he doesn't know any of the scholars. And he just doesn't have a filmmaker. But when you meet with him, he had just got traded from the Detroit Lions back to the Jaguars. Because he started his career with the Jaguars, was with the Jaguars for, I think, 2 years, was with the Lions for 8. Came back to the Jaguars, ended up tearing his hamstring, but he was only here for 10 days. And in one of those 10 days, I was in Jacksonville because I live in Jacksonville. And I was home because, traveling. And so I met him and his wife at a Mediterranean restaurant. And they talked about their vision and the money they had set aside. I told them a filmmaker had reached out to me a year ago with the same idea. We left like, I think we're going to work together. And I was like, let me introduce you to the filmmaker because, you're about to invest. So I want to make sure you know him and are comfortable with his work. I connected them. Then we decided we're going to do the film. And 4 years later, Unspoken is released. Now, we thought that it was going to take a year and a half, 2 years. It took 4. But in God's providential plan, COVID, delayed some things.
Yeah.
But we're here now, and it was released on Juneteenth.
Yeah. And let me tell you, I've had a chance to look at this documentary. First of all, I love when people just do things with excellence. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes there's this expectation that because of resources and all these things that, we're not going to do things with excellence, and just knowing that you Be the Bridge, started out probably with not investment funds,
started at zero,
just from the bottom. Yes. Same thing, 0. And, to look at what God has done, and when I was looking at this video, I'm looking at the cinema photography. He is excellent at what he does, and just the cutouts, all of it, the way he filmed it is just beautiful. And then so that adds to the messaging. That's important. That adds to the messaging. It's actually better than some of the documentaries that I've seen on Netflix or Prime Video, all those different things. And it's just so needed for our community. So those of you who are listening, if you have not heard about it, unspokenmovie.com, you can download it and watch it, share it. There's also bonus supplements with it. I think there's a curriculum that goes with it. So I think it would be even a great thing for small groups, Bible studies, organizations. And this is not just for, Black and brown people. This is something where we need to see where things have gone off the rail, in some of these conversations, because there are still seminaries and churches teaching about the curse of Ham. And I know the documentary addresses that. It addresses just some of the founding church fathers who were men of color. It addresses that. It addresses some of the cultural issues within and faith issues within our community, is dealing with some Nation of Islam and all the things. It addresses that. I mean, it gets down into it. And why did you pick the subjects that you chose, the topics?
So it was really just what we deal with on the ground.
Yeah.
So one of the things we do with Jude 3 is we do an HBCU tour.
Okay.
And we go to different HBCUs and host a forum called It's Christianity, White Man's Religion. Yeah. And you hear students, the first part of our event is called Talk Back, where we allow students to talk back for 2 minutes. They get the mic and tell us what they think is wrong with Christianity, why they think it's white man's religion. And you hear kids that grew up in church.
Yeah.
I don't want this faith. It's white man's religion. We need to be in Comedicism, African spirituality, Hebrew Israelism. This is where I find identity. This is for me. This is a white man's religion. And so you hear that over and over. And really, they're really just trying to find a faith that affirms their humanity. And we just wanted to address the pain points that we hear on the ground. And so that's why all of these topics were chosen, because we knew students in real time, this is not some like pie in the sky or, we're pulling at straws. These are actually students that we interact with. So like at the ending part of the documentary, you see clips from our Benedict tour, where we went to Benedict College in South Carolina, and you hear the students saying, I grew up in church, but this is a white man's religion. And so you get to see like these are issues that college students are wrestling with. And it hits personally for our executive producer who is in the NFL, that his first year of college at Norfolk State, in his African American Studies class, his professor was saying all of these things about Christianity being a white man's religion, and he left the faith because of it. And he ended up coming to the faith, back to the faith years ago. But these are real things that pull at the heartstrings.
Man, and it's for those of you who are listening, when she said the tour that she does at HBCUs, that I don't take for granted that people know anything, but it's historically black colleges. And historically black colleges exist because there was segregation. We were not allowed to go to white universities. So that's why we have historically black colleges. That is why we have denominations that are particularly, black denominations like the AME. And it wasn't that these people wanted to be segregated, is that they were not allowed to go to church and worship freely with their God-given dignity, or have an education, just like everyone else. And so that is why these things exist, and they still have a place today, because we experience a lot of oppression in some of the PWI institutions, and then also what we're experiencing now in church. And I want to talk about that. Like right now, we see people, especially black people, who are integrated into multi-ethnic churches or predominantly white churches, because our desire has always been to be the full family of God, to see us as your equal, to see our dignity. And so a lot of that, we have been, bridge builders in those spaces in that sense, or just not even have been in the space to try and bring proximity or understanding or to help, a lot of times without power. And what has happened within the last few years, we've seen some of the ugliness of really saying that you're not welcome here, or the fullness of who you are is not recognized here, or we want you here as a picture but not as a voice, and so we are seeing people that are painful. I have friends now that have left the church but not their faith in that sense. And you do have a lot of, some of their kids are really saying the same thing. What you hear kids saying in college, that because of what they've experienced in youth group and some of these spaces, or either in neighborhoods and communities and what is happening in our culture, they are like really dismayed with this faith, and they see it, and even how we visualize it when they say a white man's religion. What do people mean when they say that Christianity is a white man's religion?
I think they're talking about, when people say Christianity is a white man's religion, I think they're talking about a heretical brand of Christianity. that is so tethered to the U.S. that it almost it tries to mask itself as Orthodox Christianity. And I think we're uncomfortable with calling the brand of Christianity that many white evangelicals hold heresy. And what we're trying to do with the Jude 3 Project is point to what biblical Christianity is. And when I get exposed to truth, I realize the lies I was under. And so, I always think about how people detect fraudulent, how they train you in the Department of Treasury to detect fraudulent money. And they don't do it by giving you frauds. They do it by training you on authentic US dollars. And you spend so much time with the real dollar that after you spent time smelling it, holding it, touching it, feeling it, they throw in a counterfeit. And the idea is because you spent so much time with the authentic that you can see the counterfeit immediately. On the flip side, though, many people have been born into counterfeit. And so when they see truth, it looks foreign. And so that's why they reject the aspect of biblical justice, because it looks foreign, because they have so much connection to the counterfeit.
Girl, we could wrap the podcast up with that right there, that statement. Like, that is just such a great analogy of the training is not to know the counterfeit, but to know the truth. But when you've been born into what you would say lies or untruth, you don't even know how to recognize truth. And truth seems wrong. And even if we're reading the same thing, but the lens that is filtered through is still filtered through a lens without context, or a lens that doesn't expose the truth. That is really powerful. I think and I know this is something that a lot of us, when we talk about excavating or deconstructing our faith, I think there's a biblical way to do that, where we're not excavating Jesus out of it, and but I do see what's happening, where there's a longing and a rejection, where people are not feeling seen or loved or known, and we're so detached. Like, even how I think about what's happening, like, naturally, as far as like African American history, we're trying to separate that from history, and then trying to punish people for anything that we say to bring up our history that makes you feel bad, or calling for repair is naming it as something wrong or evil. It's similar, the same thing, within biblical history, where it does matter. And I know one of these things is even the visual. And when I think some of my excavating, like early on in the early 2000s, had to be when I visualize Jesus. Like, if I'm visualizing Jesus, like, what am I visualizing? And the thing would be, I'm visualizing images that I've seen in, Sunday school books, pictures, media. I mean, and that is of a white Jesus. And I had to train myself to see something different, because Jesus was not European. And I know that's one of the things. What have you seen as it relates to that? Because, like, I remember going to this justice conference and there was a justice conference. So these are people that, know and understand and have done some work in this. And I remember this, like, really popular pastor was just talking about just the awesomeness of God, and they were putting these visuals up there, which probably worked in like certain settings. But I remember seeing like all these pictures they were showing was of a white European Jesus with blonde hair, blue eyes. And I remember gasping like, and that's what he learned in seminary, I'm pretty sure. And, but it's problematic, because there's, white supremacy attached to that, but people don't understand. It's like, it doesn't matter. Well, if it doesn't matter, then make sure that you're speaking the truth if it doesn't matter, but what are some of your thoughts around that, the imagery, of Jesus,
Yeah, so it's funny because one of the things we do going back to our HBCU tour is we show video clips in conjunction with our presentation. So we show viral video clips. And one of the clips we show is from Muhammad Ali talking about white Jesus. And you could see that he's asking the man, are we going to be servants when we get to heaven? Because the angels are white, Jesus is white. And so you start to see the psychological ramifications that having an image of white Jesus has. I remember talking to a student at FAMU, and he was talking to me about faith, and he was struggling with Christianity. And he said, for me, it's difficult because Adam and Eve were white, so that makes me feel like my skin color is because of the fall. And I was like, wow. Because of the images that he had seen of Adam and Eve being white, he logically concluded from that black people are a part of sin.
Yeah.
And it just showed me even deeper the impact. And he was a sophomore at the time. He's graduated now. But the psychological impact of him internalizing these things, of seeing Bible characters that white, that made him dehumanize himself. And so I think many people don't realize the psychological impacts, because you couple white Jesus with supremacy, and you make it seem like everything that's white is pure and everything that's black is evil. I love the way a slave says, Emerson Powery, a New Testament professor at Messiah College, was on the podcast, and he recounts that there was a slave narrative when the slave master was trying to tell the slave that you're cursed because you're black. The slave that had read his Bible said, in my Bible, when God punished Miriam, he turned her skin white. And so he was trying to say that you can't tell me. He wasn't trying to say whiteness was cursed, but what he was trying to show is that you can't manipulate the text to try to manipulate me. And so I just think we need to really, really evaluate the ways in which our decisions and how we depict Jesus impacts others. How we depict Jesus impacts others.
If you've been enjoying and learning from the Be the Bridge podcast, we invite you to join us in this work. You can support and sustain our mission as a recurring partner at bethebridge.com/give. You can also help spread this word of bridge building by supporting and really sporting our apparel. So if you haven't gotten your Be the Bridge hat, sweatshirt, all of the things, let's take the message to the street. Visit our online store at shop.bethebridge.com and make sure we're spreading the word about all the work that Be the Bridge is doing and will do. At Be the Bridge, we're doing the work to empower people and culture toward racial healing, racial equity, and racial reconciliation. And this work is only possible because of the generosity of bridge builders like you. So thank you so much for those of you who are listening and sharing our podcast, sharing our posts, those of you who are giving to this work that's helping us create resources and material that will transform hearts. So join us at bethebridge.com/give, and let's continue to build bridges together. Thank you so much. some of my friends, they're kids who have grown up in multi-ethnic churches or that were more about assimilation, youth group, neighborhoods, schools. One of my friends' kids was just telling me, I was just talking to him, and we were talking about college, and he was saying, well, I think I'm, gonna go. He's a real smart young man. He was talking about going to HBCU. And I said, oh, that's good. Both of your parents went to HBCUs. And he said, yeah. And just the school system that he's in is very white. And he looked at the wall, and the wall was white. He said, because this is crushing me. And, he's like, I'm tired of this right here, and I think about it, his parents made a decision to leave a predominantly white church and go into a church that was more multi-ethnic and multicultural. But the more multi-ethnic and more multicultural the church became, you begin to have white flight out of the church, which is common. Because when we start showing up a little bit more, even our white brothers and Christian white brothers and sisters get uncomfortable when they're not the majority in those spaces, and you have white flight. So that church that was very multi-ethnic and multicultural now is more predominantly African American. I seen that at the Kurt Franklin Kingdom tour with Maverick City. Maverick City reaches like a really diverse crowd, multi-ethnic crowd. And Kirk, that's like, I grew up on Kirk, Gen X, that, I'm telling you, that is, his music is one of the early things that kept me as a young Christian. But his style of worship is different. We understand it, but a lot of people don't understand it. So in that diverse crowd, I was seeing, like, when he was up, worshiping, doing stuff, people would sit down, and we don't really know how to kind of like be inclusive and making sure everybody. I think we know how to do. We have to know how to survive and thrive in these different environments, because we've had to survive and thrive. And and our palette, I think, is just really more diverse as it relates to music, all these things, because we've had to do that. But I've seen it, and I'm hearing these conversations, just from some of the young adults and Gen Zers, and the other one after them, I forget who they are, the group.
Alpha.
Gen Alpha, all of that. And these are some real conversations. So I'm glad that you are speaking into that, and I'm grateful for these tours that you guys are having. And what are some of the other things that comes up, in some of the conversations that you're having?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, deconstruction is a big thing. And one of the things, the things that I kind of try to help people navigate through in deconstruction is to be weary of overcorrecting.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so I always say, it's like, if you saw your parents driving in a particular direction and at the end they drove off a cliff, your overcorrection is say, I'm never going that way. I'm going to go the opposite way. Well, you don't know that the opposite way leads off a cliff. That the direction your parents were going was the right way. They just missed the right turn. But overcorrection doesn't allow you to evaluate the life. It kind of, it jettison everything. And so if they took you to church every Sunday and there was no personal transformation in their life, or it didn't make your home better, you think, this faith is not for me. It's not productive. It doesn't help. It's not beneficial. I need to throw it all away. Instead of investigating your parents' life and see where they may have missed a turn or got off. That the whole path wasn't bad, just in the ways in which they drove on the path led them down the cliff. And so I think that's one way. And also guarding our hearts from bitterness when we're trying to get to truth. Because I always say that when bitterness has control of your heart, then truth gets distorted in your mind. And you can't see truth when your heart is clouded by bitterness. And so before you deconstruct, I would say go to therapy. see, process those things out with the therapist.
Yes.
So then when you do look at faith, you can see it clearly, and you won't start conflating a lot of stuff, which leads to that overcorrection.
That is so good. I think we need help in that deconstruction process, like, spiritual guidance, from someone that has done this work in a healthy manner. I think we need, I know there's some kind of small groups or cohorts that have formed, for some people are doing, and like you said, therapy, and I think that for me has helped. And because sometimes if you surround yourself with everybody who's struggling with the same thing, that adds, but needing leadership. But I think even some of your resources can help guide people as they do this. Like, that was the first thing I did, and looking at the documentary was send it to that group of friends and say, hey, y'all need to watch this with your family and with your, a lot of my friends, like, we're at an age now where most of the kids are in high school or either going to college. Watch this with them, because this will help answer some of those things that maybe you can't answer. You've done a lot of the theological work that a lot of people don't have the expert in. They know it's wrong or know bits and pieces, but this is something that's visual that they can listen to and watch. And I think it would be helpful in that. And one of the things you talk about in the video, he talked about like the Ethiopian eunuch and, and how words in the Bible to describe black and dark were like places in Africa. Africa is not mentioned, but places in Africa are mentioned throughout the Bible. From Genesis on, like, those places are mentioned, those people are mentioned. And then he was talking about the Ethiopian eunuch. Like, it's like we forget. And I've even heard people, black people and white people, repeat this, saying, well, this slavery was bad, but at least like your people or we became Christians.
And we were the first Gentile convert noted in the Bible was the African.
Say it again.
Not a white person.
Say it again.
The first Gentile convert noted in the Bible was African.
Yes.
Ethiopian eunuch.
And this was how many years before, like other religions, what I'm saying? So there's a lot. I was even reading about this history. I was watching this other documentary, and it was about the story of this British ship that had slaves on it. And the people were made to dance. How they would try to exercise the people to kind of, so they weren't weak when they brought them to shore. And so the enslaved people, brought them up and was doing this march that they would do, and they would make them take off their clothes because it was just demeaning. Like, if we could understand the brutality of enslavement and what it meant, and then just the mindset of people who like executed that injustice is just crazy. But they would make them dance, and this one lady refused, this one woman. These are documented accounts because slavery was about economics, and there's documents connected to those economics. And she refused to remove her clothes because she thought it was humiliating, and she had a cross or something that was made on her neck, and she was holding on to that cross. And this is what is described by a European doctor that was on that ship. And she was holding on to it, and because she refused to march, she was hoisted up by her feet, and her head was rammed into the ground. And because she refused, because she was a Christian, to humiliate her faith, her body, and all of those things. And so when I read that story and I'm reading it, and I'm like, she was already a Christian. She was already a convert already, she was already a person of faith. And it was kind of like Christianity was in Africa before it was in Europe. And we forget that. And some of the thoughts that were borrowed from African scholars, biblical scholars, like that is documented. But most of that is not taught in seminaries, the Schofield comment, like in a lot of the commentaries that we look at, like teach the curse of Ham. Like that's one of the things that comes up, and we in our work of biblical like racial literacy, that is a question that comes up all the time in 2022. It's the curse of Ham. So Lisa, I want you to just speak to that a little bit, and because I know that's something that comes up commonly, and you guys mentioned this in the documentary when you were saying like all the commentaries, majority of the most popular commentaries are written by white men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that speaks to, why I felt like it was important to start Jude 3 Project and have apologetics in the Black space. Because there's so much that you miss if you only are looking at the text through your cultural lens. And it's so much you infer in the text because you're looking through your cultural lens. When we think about, like, one of the things I think about is women and sexual assault in the Bible. And when you look at a commentary, those things are really never addressed when you talk about Levite and the concubine. Because they don't see it. Because culturally, it's like, oh, okay, that happened. But you don't realize the impact on a woman that reads that text. She's going to read that text way differently because she may have experienced assault, know somebody who experienced assault. Similarly, in the same way, when white men look at a text about race and justice, the curse of Ham, they are thinking through their cultural lens. And a lot of commentaries are written by men that were still in segregation. Still written with slavery, Jonathan Edwards owned slaves. So you got to think, how am I going to justify this part of my life that I don't want to let God have control of? I have to create a narrative that gets me out of this commandment. And so you go and pull out the curse of Ham because that helps you feel okay with your dehumanization and it keeps your money good. How can George Whitefield justify owning slaves? Build an orphanage to balance out. I'm using this to help kids. And we build schools and churches and colleges with that name. And then you got to think that Lisa Bowen's a New Testament scholar at Princeton. She talked about on my podcast that sometimes they would give slaves alternate creation stories to say you weren't created Adam and Eve, you were created some other way, because the first way to justify treating a person badly is to first dehumanize them.
Right.
And so they had to make them less human. That's the Constitution. We're 3/5 less human. If you're not human, I don't feel guilty because God only calls me to love other humans. I don't have to love you if you're not like me.
And which is the basis of the manifest dynasty, destiny, and then also the doctrine of discovery. All of those things, do that. And that, I tell you, and I'm just so grateful to this work of exposing the truth. But like you said, people will not even recognize the truth because they've been dealing with a counterfeit. But we have to understand that our faith should produce fruit. It should produce flourishing. It should produce restoration for all. And when your faith is not leading to that, when your faith is leading to the oppression and marginalization of people, then there's something wrong with that faith.
Yeah, it's a counterfeit.
Yeah.
And it's heretical.
Yeah. And I mean, and if we look at Christian white nationalism, what is that leading to? And who does that uplift? And who does that marginalize? And that lets you know that God is not in that. But it's just, and it's sad because this is the thing in my heart now. Like, my heart weeps for people who are blinded by that, and it's like, that is why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, but I cannot change your mind. Like, I cannot create transformation. Only God can do that. So I can create tools that prayerfully will help lead you to that transformation, but I can't do that. I wish I could go in there and do it, but I can't do it. That's the work of the heart that only the Spirit of God can do. And so I think just as God is using you to change this conversation and really kind of rebuild the faith in our community, because like for even after all of the, what you would say, the marginalization and the inhumane treatment and all of that, you see people of faith. You know, I'm always inspired by, I mean, there's so many stories I'm inspired by, but I think about Harriet Tubman, who was led with, you know, basically a slave Bible. And you've seen the some of the slave Bible and what was in it and what wasn't in it. And for her to still be led by the Spirit of God to be a liberator, you know, in the name of Jesus. Like, she was a woman of faith. Her nickname was Moses. And she was wanted and died impoverished, you know, after leading military victories and all of those things. And so when I look at someone like her, who, it makes me feel like some of the faith that the marginalized community is, it doesn't make me feel like, I know that some of the faith of the marginalized community is a more true faith, you know, and because only God can do that, like, you know, what she endured, you know. So, man, this is incredible. I mean, what are some of the things, you know, as you are journeying through this and leading this organization with all the pushback, kickback, all the things that I know, like, as a African American leading or organization, I know finances are a lot of times the issue, but I'm looking at just your story of God just, you know, bring in the finances. And I have stories like that, and other people have stories like that. So it helps you keep your hands like this to God open and prayerful, and because you're not doing it by yourself. Like, you know, you are dependent. But what are some things that are, you know, encouraging you right now?
I think I'm just encouraged by the response, particularly today, of the documentary. Okay. And seeing, I got a message I saw that was on Instagram. Mm-hmm. A woman said she got swept up in this concept that Christianity is white man's religion, left the faith, came back some years later, but she was in Christianity, went back to church, but still was unsettled because all her questions weren't answered. She said she watched the documentary. It answered all the questions she had.
Amen.
And it gave her such assurance. And so I remember what it was like to question in undergrad. I remember how painful that was to feel like your foundation is shaken and that your foundation is about to be pulled away from up under you, that you have nothing to stand on. And I know that when something comes that gives clarity to distorted vision, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that God was able to use my struggle in undergrad to bring clear sight to other people. And so it's just like, I couldn't have imagined,
right,
when I said in that New Testament class, I went into college saying I'm a PK And my parents are good parents, but church is such an all-consuming thing that I wasn't going to be in ministry. I was going off to become a stockbroker.
Right.
And this was the last thing. I didn't even know what apologetics was when I went into college.
Right.
And so to see God take that struggle, that I remember crying in my car after class in the parking garage saying, God, I don't know what I believe. And now to help give clarity encourages my heart, because it shows that God is working all things out for our good, and he's using things that I couldn't have imagined. I still thought when I was crying in my car that I was going to be a stockbroker. I didn't know that he was going to use those painful moments to give me the empathy, the compassion to be able to lead a generation to truth.
Yeah. Amen. What are some of the things that you're lamenting now?
So I think I lament still our access as Black women to capital for organizations. I was in a meeting with a major foundation the other day, and the guy said to me, I'm looking at your budget. I don't even know how you were able to get all this done on such a limited budget. He said, you're dancing, you're circling the block, doing way more than organizations that have 10 times what you have. And he said, it makes no sense that you're able to pull this off with these much limited resources. Yeah. And the hoops women like you and I have to jump through just to get a little bit, a percentage of what our white male counterparts get it breaks my heart to see that I saw organizations spent more than my whole budget on T-shirts because they have that much in abundance. And I lament that it's this difficult for us for fundraising.
Yeah, and you know, even, you know, like we bring in less than our white male counterparts, white female counterparts, and Black male counterparts, you know, and that's a real thing. We're having some of those conversations now as an organization, and you know, and it's just like my prayer I said, God, we have to deal with so much, like, you know, the pushback, you know, all of the things. We're in such a tough conversation. I mean, it's a firestorm in this conversation that we're in. And I'm like, you know, like, that's such a burden in itself. I'm like, God, don't let us have to worry about finances, you know? It's like, let that be the least of our worries. Let us have abundance to do the things, you know, that we want to do. You know, we want to do some a documentary on some of the life transformation of people who are leading Be the Bridge groups and having this conversation in their churches and stuff. And I have a friend, another one, who's a filmmaker. And just like, but it costs to do those things. And so, but, you know, believe in God for at the right time, the next step, all of those things. And so I lament that with you, but you're doing good work, and I know God is going to multiply the work that you're doing. And so I know the thing I was like, because I was like trying to watch the video before, and I was like, no, I want to invest in this, like, no, like, invest in the $12.99 of the video, download the video, and make sure you guys those of you who are listening with access to the video, don't be sharing your code with nobody, you know. Make them pay for it, because this is what goes to support the work, and so that more videos and stuff like this can be produced, because it takes money, you know. And those of you with resources and access, see how you can come alongside organizations that so that we can continue this good work. What are some things that you are hopeful for as it relates to your work?
I'm hopeful about the next generation.
Yeah.
I think once they really catch on, they're going to turn the world upside down.
Yeah.
I remember a prominent speaker said one time he was in the room at a university. It was about 3,000 in the room. And he said, look around. Everybody's looking around. He said it was the same amount on Pentecost. And they changed. They turned the world upside down. And that same Holy Spirit power is available to us. And so I think that when people catch on to the truth of the gospel message, to biblical Christianity, it provides a hope. This world is getting more and more dark, but God has has called us to be light. And the more dark it gets, the more we're going to be those lights that people come to. They're looking for hope. Depression in Gen Z is higher than any other. Suicide rates are up. People don't see any reason for living. And it's not just about amenities, because we're talking about wealthy kids.
Yeah.
So if it was just in stuff, then they wouldn't have any problems.
Yeah.
But there is a hope that's needed beyond what this life, what access, what wealth can give. And that hope is in the gospel.
Yeah. It's so good. Well, thank you for the resources. We will list, all the things. I know you have Courageous Conversations curriculum is out. You have Courageous Conversation Conference is happening in September the 2nd through the 3rd in Washington, D.C. Courageous Conversations Jude 3 projects gathering that pairs Black voices trained in conservative and progressive spaces to discuss topics that are relevant for the church and culture. And I love the fact that, like how you said you're transcending tribe, and I love that. And and people must allow you to do that, because this is needed, in all the different spaces. And because like people always talk about in eternity, there ain't gonna be no such thing as no AME and all the different things that we keep seeing. But our ethnic story does follow us there, and so you have the Unspoken documentary that is out now. If you go to unspokenmovie.com, and then there's tell me a little bit about the upcoming partnership with Access.
So one of the foundations we work with wanted some collaboration amongst their grantees, and they put us together. I had never heard of Access, but I told the foundation that we partner with, there's not curriculum, I feel like, to help Black Christians think about sexuality. For kids. So how to explain how parents can talk to their kids about sexuality, gender. I haven't seen that for the Black church. I know some white evangelical organizations have done that work. And I thought it was important to create that. But also, one of the things we do is a Why Don't Go series that's went viral across social media, where I sit down with young adults who left the faith. And it's parents reach out to me. One parent in particular reached out to me. I think she was in Chicago. She was like, "Hey, I'll fly you to Chicago to talk to my daughter. She's left Christianity." I'm like, I can't set that kind of precedent.
Right.
But I realized that when kids leave the church, it really is very difficult. It becomes very difficult for the parent-child dynamic.
Yeah.
Parents don't know how to talk to their kids. They don't understand why they don't see church as beneficial. And we wanted to create a resource that helped them talk to their children.
Okay.
In a way that will bridge the gap. Maybe they won't come back to church, but at least the relationship can function.
Yes.
And so Access already does in white evangelical space. They curate conversations between parents and children.
Okay.
And so they're well known in that. And so partnering with them, I think just seemed like a very helpful, a beneficial partnership on both ends. So we're looking for the resources that we produce to come out in early 2023.
Okay, cool. Okay, I love it. Thank you so much, Lisa, for taking the time. Thank you for all that you're doing in this space. And we are grateful. We are a better body because of it, because of your work. And congratulations on the just the release of this documentary, okay?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So much.
Go to the donors table if you'd like to hear the unedited version of this podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Be the Bridge podcast. To find out more about the Be the Bridge organization and or to become a bridge builder in your community, go to bethebridge.com. Again, that's bethebridge.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, remember to rate and review it on this platform and share it with as many people as you possibly can. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Today's show was edited, recorded, and produced by Trayvon Potts at Integrated Entertainment Studios in Metro Atlanta, Georgia. The host and executive producer is Latasha Morrison. Lauren C. Brown is the senior producer.
And transcribed by Sarah Conitzer.
Please join us next time. This has been a Be the Bridge production.